Gladiator begins by showing a high school teenager named Tommy Riley, who, for some reason, has to move in with his father to start a new life. But their new home is in a slum area where many gangs roam freely. When Tommy heads to his new school, a group of teenagers in the neighborhood tries to harass him. And what's more unfortunate, it turns out that he is in the same class with 3 people from the group that had bullied him on the way. As a transfer student, Tommy doesn't want to cause trouble with delinquent students, so he just obeyed when the 3 people told him to change seats 3 times. He began to run out of patience when they told him to change seats for the 4th time. He stayed where he was even though they told him to move, upsetting them. Fortunately, the teacher entered the classroom and told the students to take their seats when the fight seemed to break out. The bullies complied, even though they threatened Tommy that they would settle their business with him during recess. Sure enough, the bullies came to Tommy during recess and even brought their friends with them. But again, he is saved after a group from another gang interrupts them. The rivalry between gangs does exist in the school, and they often fight there, just like today, where the 2 gang leaders duel one-on-one in the presence of other students. One of them did not hesitate to use sharp weapons in the fight. It was only because the teachers were aware of them that the duel had to end early without having a winner. As if the problems at school weren't enough for him, Tommy still had to deal with the debt collectors when he got home. Indeed, he and his father had to move into a new house because his father had accumulated a lot of gambling debt after his mother died. And now, because of his father's trouble, Tommy has to face 2 debt collectors who come to his house with guns. But luckily, they didn't harm him one bit. They just threatened him to make his father pay off his debt, which had been in arrears for 2 weeks. Later that night, Tommy was awakened by his father's return. His father was actually kind to him, as seen from how he asked about his first day at his new school. Here, Tommy chooses to lie and say that everything is going well. But his father thought otherwise. He felt Tommy was hiding something from him. And so, Tommy was forced to tell him about the arrival of 2 debt collectors at the house this afternoon, which made his father sad. His father realized that he had made a mistake that ruined their life, and that's why he promised Tommy that he would fix everything. He had found a new job in another well-paying city, with which he could pay off his debts and improve their financial situation. On the other hand, Tommy didn't mind having to live alone for a while because he was an adult. To lighten his father's burden, he even decided to work as a dishwasher at a local diner owned by his classmates' parents. But one night, the thugs at his school came to the diner and decided to continue their unfinished business as soon as they saw Tommy working there. Tommy was still trying to endure their provocation at first, but then he couldn't take it anymore after they pushed him down and laughed at him with stupid expressions on their faces. He immediately got up and then beat 2 of them. But when he was about to beat the 3rd one, an old man he didn't know suddenly came and interrupted them. The old man turned out to be a local boxing promoter named Jack. He claims to like the way Tommy fights and is interested in offering him a chance to fight in an illegal underground boxing match. He was willing to pay Tommy $600, which he immediately refused. Tommy wanted a fee of $1,250. Jack could find someone else willing to pay less if he didn't want. After going through tough negotiations, Jack finally agrees to his demands. They shook hands in the presence of the diner owner's daughter, Dawn. The next night, Tommy visits the illegal fighting site where Jack introduces him to Noah, the man who will train him and take care of all his needs while he is there. One of Noah's first pieces of advice was that the match he was about to play would be like war. He doesn't need to care about fairness in the ring because no one will care about it. Moreover, Tommy will be met with Black Death, a fighter who likes to play dirty. Unexpectedly, Tommy meets his classmate, Romano, who is surprised to hear that he has to fight the Black Death in his first battle. He suggested that Tommy be careful with his right hand when he fought his opponent later. And so, heeding Romano's advice, he entered the ring. All the spectators were betting on Black Death's victory, and they all cheered with joy as he entered the arena. What Noah said turned out to be true. Black Death played dirty since the match started by throwing an elbow at Tommy, making his temples bleed. And it didn't stop there because next, he hit Tommy's groin area with full force. But, even if the Black Death did a dirty way of fighting, the referee still ignored it. After all, that was all allowed in this boxing arena. But after a while of fighting, the Black Death began to tire, allowing Tommy to deliver a barrage of attacks that knocked him down. Ultimately, he won his first fight, leaving viewers, bettors, and investors in disbelief at what they saw. But then, as Tommy raised his hands in victory, they all cheered in celebration. The next day, Tommy was asked to meet Jack's boss, Mr. Horn, to make the payment. But apparently, Horn liked how he fought last night, so he asked Tommy to come back fighting for him. The offer was rejected by Tommy because he only wanted $1,250, nothing more, nothing less. As the day progresses, he crosses paths with Dawn, who doesn't hide her disappointment after knowing that Tommy has chosen to become an illegal fighter. but she finally breathed a sigh of relief after knowing that he had only fought in the ring once. He had absolutely no interest in becoming a full-time fighter. But all that changed when Jack asked Tommy to meet with Horn again in the afternoon. After a bit of small talk, Horn finally revealed that the two debt collectors who had been to Tommy's house were his men. And to make it worse, his father recently started gambling again and lost his debt to $15,000. But Horn has a solution for him to pay his father's debt easily. Tommy only had to be his fighter in a few matches. As one might expect, Tommy accepted the offer to pay off his father's debt. While walking home from Horn's place, Tommy accidentally sees his schoolmate, Lincoln, being ganged up on by gang members. He decides to help him, but because they are outnumbered, they are forced to flee from the gang members who continue to chase them. After escaping their pursuit, Tommy and Lincoln engage in a conversation, revealing that Lincoln already has a wife and children despite his young age. That's why he chose to earn money to support his family by becoming a fighter in illegal boxing, just like Tommy. Later that night, Tommy decided to watch Lincoln's fight, where his new friend seemed overwhelmed by his opponent who was bigger than him. But in the end, he managed to turn things around quickly and won the fight. At this point, Tommy could no longer contain his curiosity about Horn. So, after watching Lincoln's fight, he goes to Noah's house and asks him about Horn's background. Turns out, Horn is a former boxer, and he even won the world heavyweight title. What's even more amazing is that he has only lost once in his boxing career. He immediately avenged that loss in a rematch by giving his opponent a lifelong injury. But in the end, even the amazing boxer had to retire after he suffered a leg injury. He had many operations on his leg, but by the time his leg healed, his golden age was over. He was too old to be in the ring again, so he decided to become a boxing promoter, a job that could bring him a lot of money without worrying about injury. Several days had passed since Dawn came to Tommy's house while he was training. She was worried because he had not come to school lately. He finally exposed the problems that entangled his family and how they forced him to participate again in the illegal boxing arena. Luckily, she understood his situation, and they even became close. Tommy's life is better than ever after becoming an illegal boxer. Dawn always accompanies his activities, and they start a romantic relationship. In addition, he develops friendships with Romano and Lincoln, whom they practice and have fun with daily. But at a match one night, tragedy struck Romano. That night, he was fighting in the ring against Shortcut, a boxer who was actually inferior to him. It was evident from how Romano dominated their fight. But when the match entered the 5th round, Shortcut chose to be sneaky by dripping a mysterious liquid on his gloves. Then, when the fight started again, Shortcut locked Romano's neck to make him inhale whatever he had dripped on his glove. And as soon as he let go of the clutch, Romano's vision immediately became blurry, making him no longer able to fight properly. Shortcut took advantage of this opportunity as much as possible by brutally beating him. Even when Romano was bleeding, he didn't want to stop, as if he enjoyed how he tortured his opponent. Tommy himself witnessed all of this from the side of the ring, and he could no longer bear to see the horror in the ring. And so, as the referee seemed to have no intention of stopping the fight, he ran to the bell and hit it, forcing the match to end at that instant. But at this point, Romano was already lying unconscious in the ring's corner. When he got home, Tommy got a call from his father, who acted oddly like nothing was wrong. He only asked how Tommy was and told him that he had to delay his return because he had unfinished business. Tommy then visited Romano in the hospital the next day, where sadly, he found his friend still lying unconscious. Doctors have declared his brain dead. Tommy, of course, couldn't just let the person who made Romano like that go unpunished, and the opportunity for revenge finally came when he was pitted against Shortcut in the ring. Once again, Shortcut tries to do his dirty trick on Tommy. But this time, his cunning didn't work for Tommy, who had already noticed how he dripped liquid on his gloves during his fight with Romano. Tommy even decides to have a dirty fight against Shortcut, smacking his opponent in the groin and making him moan in pain before delivering a relentless barrage of punches. Tommy finally won the fight in the 1st round. With Romano gone, Tommy's only close friend left is Lincoln. But something happened to Lincoln one day while he was training. His body suddenly weakened, and then he fell for some reason. And it turns out that the reason was that the previous week, he had been hit in the head hard enough that he is now showing symptoms of brain damage. That's why he was asked to take a break from boxing for at least 60 days. Otherwise, he could get permanent brain damage. But Horn had other ideas for Lincoln. Later that night, Tommy was confused to see that the opponent he was supposed to face was fighting with another boxer. So, he went to Horn to ask what had happened. And this was when Horn revealed his plan. It turns out that he wants Tommy to fight Lincoln, to which the latter agrees. Of course, that made Tommy mad at Lincoln. His current condition did not allow him to fight, and above all, Tommy was afraid that he would lose another friend. But no matter what Tommy tells him, Lincoln is determined to fight him. After all, this was a golden opportunity for Lincoln to show his skills to Horn, who had promised to move him to the professional level if he won this fight. Realizing he won't be able to change Lincoln's mind, Tommy then goes to Horn to persuade him to call off his fight with Lincoln. But his efforts ended in vain. Day after day passed until the time for the fight between Lincoln and Tommy finally arrived. This is arguably the biggest fight in illegal underground boxing, and of course, Dawn should see her boyfriend in this fight. However, Tommy was not enthusiastic, in stark contrast to Lincoln. Sure enough, as soon as the first round bell rang, Lincoln bombarded Tommy with attacks. On the other hand, he plays passively. He never once attacked Lincoln, even when Lincoln knocked him down. His behavior certainly made Lincoln angry. If the game continues like that, certainly, the Horn will not pay them. And Horn didn't like it when he watched a boring game. The audience thought the same as him. Therefore, at halftime into the second round, Horn threatened Tommy by holding Dawn, saying that he could do whatever he wanted to her if Tommy didn't fight seriously. But whatever the reason, Tommy couldn't have hit Lincoln because one hit to his head could be fatal. So, to the satisfaction of Horn and the audience, he chose to punch Lincoln in the body throughout the fight. He tries to persuade Lincoln to stop this pointless fight, arguing that even if one of them dies, Horn won't care. All he cared about was money. But Lincoln responded to all of his words by hitting his head. At this moment, Tommy had given up on persuading Lincoln. If he is eager to get some money from Horn, Tommy asks him to put all his strength into hitting him. But to his surprise, Lincoln finally realized the truth of Tommy's words. This is all wrong. They shouldn't have had this fight. And so, he chose to stop without finishing the fight, much to the audience's disappointment. Horn was disappointed, but above all else, he was furious, so he stepped into the ring to tell Lincoln to finish the fight. However, Lincoln refused his orders. He said that from now on, he would stop working for him. This decision seemed to make Horn lose control of himself. He hit Lincoln right on the head without another word, sending him flying out of the ring. By now, Tommy probably felt Horn had gone too far. He must be taught a lesson to realize that what he did was despicable. So, for that reason, Tommy stepped into the ring and challenged him to a duel right now in this place. If Tommy wins, Horn must clear his father's debt, but if he wins, Tommy will work for him forever. Horn was willing to accept that condition, but he had one condition: they had to fight without their gloves. As a former boxing champion, Horn has extensive experience that gives him the upper hand, and it can be seen from how he mocks and humiliates Tommy early in the fight. But his arrogance was the cause of his downfall. Tommy may be young, but he is smart. He quickly learned how to fight Horn, then used it to defeat him. First, Tommy deliberately let Horn hit his head to break one of Horn's fingers. Then, he provoked Horn's wrath just as he did to Tommy at the start of the match. And by seeing his reaction, Tommy realized that anger was Horn's weak point. But that alone wasn't enough to beat him. So, Tommy pretended that his right arm was broken to catch Horn off guard. Only when the moment was right, he punched Horn in the face, followed by another 13 punches, knocking him out. And with Horn's loss, Tommy and his father are finally out of debt. The film's end shows Tommy celebrating his victory along with Lincoln and Dawn. The moral that can be learned from this movie is how we should control ourselves to not waste our money on useless things such as gambling. Because that thing is addictive, and if we were unlucky, it could make us need to borrow money from someone. And if we couldn't pay, they might hurt us or even our family.